once again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And to start, could you please tell us, or right now me, a little bit about your background and your journey in the world of customer support?
Sure. So I have been in customer support and operations for a long time, like probably 20 some years. Before when I first came out of university, I was in technology and custom development, and then later on in package implementation. So like SAP, PeopleSoft, the giant
Okay.
ERP systems that were so popular that was right around 2000. So as people were preparing for Y2K, we would go in and implement either a custom application to get them around the Y2K constraints or a package product. But then after that, I wanted to get off the road. That was with a consulting firm. I wanted to get off the road, so I took a job in Cleveland, Ohio, with Progressive Insurance, and it was a fantastic learning environment. They have always been and still are. I think they're about to become the largest auto insurer in the country, which is amazing because when I was there, they were like seventh. They were way down the list. So they've continued to do excellent work, and it's really paid off. But learned a ton there about analysis, analytics, and customer service, customer support. Their founder went to high school with Seth Godin, and I think maybe university too. He was very, they were pretty close. So Progressive and I got to be part of it. We implemented Net Promoter Score really at the very when Net Promoter Score was very new and very like cutting edge in the world of customer service and customer operations and customer experience. So got to do that there. We also used customer effort score very early on, and we just really put a huge focus on our call centers and the quality of that service, both from a service perspective as well as from a sales perspective early on. So it was a great training ground. I learned how to run QA. I learned how to manage teams there, call center teams, both phone and email. We didn't have chat at the time, but I think they do now. But yeah, that was like my foray into customer service operations. Then I moved to JP Morgan Chase, did the same thing there, but my big learning there was international teams. So was a part of rolling out a site in Manila, Philippines, for Chase. It was a Chase-owned building and all Chase employees, but in the Philippines. Um, Managing or running the call center, part of the call centers for JP Morgan Chase. And so that was an amazing learning experience from a cultural perspective and just learning how to manage remotely way before people were thinking about remote management as a thing. And of course, working with a different culture and a group of people who English was a second language to all of that critical learning. Took that and actually went to Wendy's, the restaurant, if you're familiar with. Yeah,
Yes.
they're all over. They're in Mexico, and so they're headquartered here in Columbus, Ohio. And
Okay.
my role there was rolling out the breakfast day part. So from an operations standpoint, everything that had to do with breakfast. So the training, first the recruiting of a whole new team for each
Mm.
store because they weren't even open at breakfast. So
Okay.
recruiting the teams, training the teams, bringing in all the new equipment that breakfast required, the new the new food parts, just all of that stuff. And I got to work with some of the most experienced operators I think exist, period. Like
Well,
my boss could walk into a restaurant and if if I would just tell him like these are their two KPIs they need to work on, he could walk in there and say within 5 minutes of looking around the restaurant, he had so much operational knowledge and experience. Within 5 minutes, he could tell them how to improve those metrics by 10 to 20%. So
well,
I just got to learn a tremendous amount from those guys too about operations, but mostly about managing teams and leading team members and the criticality of having engaged people working with you, and the difference between people that really care about doing a great job, and that's something that Wendy's always took very seriously, is Dave Thomas, their founder. His quote was, "We don't cut corners." That's why their burger patties are
Ah,
square. So it's a little bit of
I love
trivia for you there,
that.
but it's something that's ingrained in their culture, and they ingrain it in their associates and in their employees
Hmm.
too. And what I took away from that is the difference that makes. When you really care, it's hard to measure care, but you definitely see it in the results. Then I was at BPO for a while, like a big BPO. And now after that, I had a small stint at a startup here in Columbus. And then I decided that kind of gave me the inspiration and the courage to build my own startup. So
Okay.
started up a boutique BPO, actually sold that one back in 2020, my ownership of it. And then I started another one with my current partner in 2022, 2020, the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. And we are almost 100% either near shore or offshore. So we've got folks in the Philippines, Colombia, Peru. We do
Oh,
have
nice.
people in India, and we do have folks in Nigeria too. So
Oh, wow.
that's our latest country continent that we've added is Nigeria, and we couldn't be
Wow.
more happy with, yeah, and the whole team. But we're bringing those cultures together. That's one of our secret sauce, is bringing those different cultures together, form really engaged, passionate teams for our clients. So that's my background. That brings you from the start to today.
That's amazing. Really big companies and big projects.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really good to have different positions, and I think it gives us the possibility to acquire more knowledge and what is
for sure.
needed to implement an idea. A great team and all the knowledge that you've had learned from previous positions on different companies, etc. So I think it's all necessary to create a new company,
Yeah,
like to
yeah,
learn
for
from
sure.
there and then to implement more ideas. And as you were saying, you need to start from ground up, like with the people and the culture. Yeah, I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing your experience. During all that process or experience, how did you first get involved with the support driven community?
So I first got involved in support driven. I was lucky enough to hire a really great salesperson for the first BPO that I started, and she found support driven and told me about how great it is. And so we've both been out there ever since. She's still part of the community too. That was how I got involved, and that was probably like 2019, I think, something like that.
Mm, a couple
Yeah,
of years. And we were commenting before this that it's going to be your first time at Expo, right?
correct. Hmm.
What are you most looking forward to about being a speaker and also kind of like an attendee?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested or excited about sharing some of the learnings that we have and some of our expertise in managing small teams effectively, which is kind of pretty close to the title of my talk. Beyond that, I'm interested in hearing the other speakers and what they're talking about, and then just meeting people. I find that support driven is not only a large community, but it's also an extremely knowledgeable community. So
I
I'm
agree.
psyched about seeing some of the, as you said, some of the names that you see out on the Slack board, and then meeting them face to face. That's probably the piece I'm most excited about. Yeah, putting those Slack names to a face. Yeah,
Yeah, it's amazing. Sometimes I feel like now we're so used to remote working that sometimes when you meet, you actually meet the people that you're talking through a screen.
right.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It
I'm
changes
sure.
everything. It's like, oh, so you're real.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm most excited about.
And yeah, you were saying that your talk at Expo is titled The Art and Science of Managing a Small Customer Support Team. So, without giving too much away and based on everything that you've said, could you give us a brief overview of what attendees can expect to learn during your session?
Yeah, so that is our niche. Our is managing customer support facing teams with 20 or fewer people. Most of our clients fit in that realm. And what I've found is that in those environments, it's interesting because you have less resource, but your expectations are typically higher. And that's
Yes.
because a lot of times you're in like a startup or an environment that's scaling, and people just expect you to almost do magical things with a very small team. They want you to be 24/7. They want you to be
Exactly.
multi-channel. They want you to have, a mid-90s CSAT and a great NPS and all this stuff. And it's very difficult sometimes because if one or two people are sick, your SLAs can go from 90% to 60% overnight. So what I want to focus on that team or in that presentation is tools that you can use that aren't necessarily like rocket science stuff, but stuff that is super important and that we have found is critical. A couple of those
Mm-hmm.
are part-time part-time associates. So
Yeah.
having the right critical blend between part-time and full-time allows
Mm-hmm.
you to fill those gaps, or if they're getting a spike in volume, you're able to pull up those part-time people without burning out your full-time people because you're asking them for so much overtime. And then same in the other direction. If things begin to slow down, you can pull back those part-time folks. That's one thing. The other thing that's super important is cross-training. With a small team, you don't have the luxury of having specializations like you do in a big team. And then the third piece I'm going to talk about is scheduling and workforce management and planning based on the things that the large BPOs do, which is like history, incoming volume, velocity of volume, hours, days of the week, all that type of stuff, matched with your handle times, matched with
Okay.
your expected occupancy and all of that good stuff. But I'm going to also be very clear on the differences, particularly in workforce management, between doing that for 100+ contact center versus a 20 or lower contact center. And one of the things I hope people find interesting about my presentation is I think that still to this day, most of the stuff written for contact centers is geared towards those contact centers with 100+ people. The
Yeah,
rules,
definitely.
when you think of like Erlang C, the algorithms, all that stuff,
Yeah.
it works at a certain size, but it actually could hurt you if you're trying to apply those things to a
Yeah,
small team.
exactly.
So
I think,
that's what I'm going
yeah.
to talk about.
Yeah, it's great. As you were saying, I think there's a lot of information about large teams and organizations. And sometimes when we want to implement those processes or ideas, we feel like we hit like the wall because we realize that they don't work out the same way or that we don't get
Right,
the expected results. And that's where frustration gets through the team and everyone's like, okay, so what do we do? How do we define where responsibilities and processes begin and end during that small team? Because as you were saying, they have very high expectations
right.
on everything. Yes,
And one of the other, there's two other tricks I'll probably incorporate into the presentation. One is, of course, using the latest and greatest tools. AI and automation
exactly.
can really help
Yeah,
you balance your demand across a smaller team. How to do that, how to think about that. And then the other piece that I've always felt is a bit of a secret sauce that people don't talk about is really going after turning your small call center from a cost center to a profit center with proactive messaging, especially if you're selling something. If your client is selling something on their website, or if you're selling something on your website, whether it's a product or a service, it's
okay,
great to have that proactive messaging to educate people and to help them through that conversion process.
okay,
But what's also great about that is, one, not only can that pay the incremental revenue, incremental income that you drive can not only pay for your team, so that gives you more bandwidth to have a larger team, but it also allows you, if something breaks or something unexpected happens that drives demand 2x, you can pull that back temporarily and put all of that supply, all of that capacity into the support mechanism for a temporary period of time. So you don't end up drowning yourself for weeks because you have a little built-in extra capacity. That's actually one of my favorite ways to do it because it's so
Yeah.
beneficial to the client to have that. And then also something always goes wrong. When a company's scaling
Yes.
fast, something always breaks. So to have that little extra capacity is huge.
Yeah, to go ahead of
Yeah,
everything. And as you were saying, keep up to date on new tools and everything, but at the same time, make your own processes to adapt those
right.
tools to each one's company, to say so, and not otherwise to try to apply one's company to those tools because it's not going to have the same results as you were
Right,
saying.
exactly, exactly.
I know that it's going to be a really good time at Expo
I
and
hope
that we're
so.
going to learn a lot from you.
I hope so. That's what I hope.
Yeah, thank you again for your time and for giving us this exciting preview. I'm really looking forward to your presentation at Expo.
Great. Thank you. I'm sure we'll talk soon. Thanks, Claudia.